I'm live, Professor Matthews learning about movies, and this is the live stream about something that only happens every 10 years, the British Film Institute's Sight and Sound poll, where they poll critics and directors every 10 years and, I guess, take a snapshot of artistic or elite tastes. This poll was just released yesterday as of this live stream, December 1st, 2022. Lots of discussion about this on the internet and everywhere else. So I hope you join the chat. I'm just waiting to see if YouTube software works, if my tech works. I'll delay this for just a minute and make sure everyone gets in here. But I have lots of comments already. Looks like lots of people waiting on this chat. I'm about 2 minutes early. So let me make a pitch for those who are going to show up a little late. Please follow me on Letterboxd. So on Letterboxd, I've written about a bunch of the movies that are in the BFI or in the Sight and Sound poll list. Some of which I really like, some of which I do not at all. I'm a curmudgeon in some ways. I trash some of those movies, but this is my Letterboxd account. I like Letterboxd. It's fun. Connect with friends, and we get to follow each other. If you don't know about this, go check it out, letterboxd.com. No, but by the way, I'm not paid by anybody. Not the BFI, not Letterboxd, not Criterion. Nobody sponsors me. So I say what I want. And I always say what pleases me. So the BFI, if you didn't know, let me pull it up here. British Film Institute has, since 1952, conducted this poll, and everybody votes in it gets 10 movies on their list. I've actually done a video about this. I don't have a vote in the poll, but what would I vote for if I had just 10 movies to send them as my greatest movies ever? So this is a greatest movies ever poll. 1952, 62, 72, 82, 92, all the way up to the present. They have records of critical taste. And at this point in movie history, we have streaming. We have lots of chatter, critical chatter online, lots of discourse in the last 10 years, and I think that's probably shaken things up a little bit, maybe a lot, on the recent poll from 2022. So, before I just get right into that, let me check so you can skip ahead right now. Yep, okay, we got people in here. Great. So, the 2022 poll, long awaited. I mean, this is 10 years in the making for me. I remember it 10 years ago coming out. So this is a very special occasion, I suppose. If you care about such lists, if you care about ranked ordered lists, if you care about elite taste, I guess. Otherwise, you can just reject all of this. So what I've got is a critics list pulled up here, I think. And then there's also a director's list. Both are a little bit different, although there's a lot of overlap between the two. I wish they were quite a bit different. It's kind of actually sad that the critics and directors overlap so much, especially in what comes first. But one question for you all is, do you like the critics list or director's list better? And by the way, what they'll do later on, as you probably know, is that you can click on here and see individual votes. All the people who voted in this poll, their best 10 movies ever, you will be able to see what they voted for. And that's, to me, more interesting than the aggregate list that we have here. Because every movie on the list gets 1 point. They tally up all the points. And then they come to this conclusion. So here's the critics list. And it has a shocker. No, that's the director's list. It has a shocker at number 1, the critics list does. For a long time, Citizen Kane in most of the polls throughout the years had been number 1. Now it's number 3. Like, does it matter? Who cares what's number 1, 2, 3, 4? I don't know. It's just a way of celebrating great art, right? That's what this is. If you want a hopeful interpretation of what it's trying to do. But it may as well be, a lot of people are accusing of this agenda-based art. So Vertigo took over number 1 in 2012. Took over the top spot from Citizen Kane. But now they've both been moved down by Gene Dealman. A movie with an address, and it's 3.5 hours long. So I joked on my Discord, you can join us on Discord, that I should show this movie to my students, not telling them what's in it, and say, this is the greatest movie ever. This is a really shocking choice because, well, it does not align with popular tastes. I mean, as you all know, if you looked at IMDb, maybe Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, I'm not sure. But some of these aggregate sites where ordinary people like me get a vote and stuff. IMDb has Shawshank Redemption #1, right? Star Wars is way up there. The Batman movies are way up there. Here, well, you get quote-unquote snobbier taste, more critical taste. And truth be told, the Sight and Sound poll goes way more towards formal elements, the excellence of technical achievement, perhaps, as well as a formal expression, the excellence of formal expression. And I find that when I don't like a movie on this list, it's because the story is stupid. Like the plot was dumb, or it was thin, or they didn't think through the plot. I mean, that is always one problem with some of these movies, in my opinion. But most of them are formally interesting. I do think, by the way, this poll, and there's one of its errors, focuses way, way more on sight than in sound. I mean, this is a sight and sound poll. Movies are sight and sound, but which one of these are excellent in terms of sound? I think sight has been overvalued. Maybe it always will be with movies and games and so on. But, we tend to forget about sound effects and music. Anyway, Gene Dealman. I have not seen this movie. So now a lot of us who think this poll is interesting will go out and watch it. But I tried to pull it up yesterday, and I saw it was a 3-hour, 21-minute runtime. And I go, oh, great, I got to schedule this, right? This is the Lawrence of Arabia of, is it a single woman in Belgium or France? I'm not sure where she lives. So pardon me for not knowing this one. I just, am lost. Most of these movies I've seen, maybe 80% of them on this list. And so most of them are still there. I think there's a lot of, what people are missing, there's a lot of traditional overlap here between the previous polls and this poll, between the 2012 poll and this one. There's Vertigo, there's Citizen Kane, there's Space Odyssey, Tokyo Story, In the Mood for Love, I think, went up. And so on and so forth. So you'll see some of these, like Man with a Movie Camera. I think that's been on every single list. So to me, the advantage of this list, crow about it all we want, get mad about it, how it does things, and I have a lot of problems with it. But, the advantage of this is that it helps describe taste at a certain moment in time, right? If you want to look back at what people thought in 1962 as great movies, go look at this poll, and it gives one picture of that. Just as people in 50 years might look at what do they think the greatest movies were? Well, they can look at this poll and have a sense of it, and I think balance it out with IMDb, really, the Internet Movie Database. So I don't mind these polls. They're for fun as descriptors of taste. What I would really like out of these polls is that along with a top 10 list, this is just my one ask here, along with every voter getting to submit their top 10 list, that they submit a short essay on what makes a movie good. All right? Tell us what your standards are and why you chose what you chose. I do think some of them actually do this. My memory of looking at these polls in the past, it's been a while, but I think some of them actually either will comment on their forms or they will write elsewhere about why they chose what they chose. But I even want to fixate on what the standards of excellence or awesomeness are. Like, why are these the greatest movies ever? Why did you pick Gene Dealman as #1, or why did you put it on your top 10 list? And no one actually put it #1 because these votes aren't ranked. So in the end, they get ranked, but on the actual individual votes, they're not. So maybe nobody would have put it #1 ever, but that's just the way mathematically they do their poll. I still would like to know, why is Citizen Kane great? What does great even mean? What's Vertigo? Why is it great? Why is Vertigo great? Why is Gene Dealman? And since I'm a teacher online here and in real life, I want to know. I want to know how people operate. I want to know their standards. I want to know their tastes, their assumptions, their presuppositions. I want to know all these things. One, to help me out. Two, is to just describe how people think these days. Because one thing definitely I haven't said about this list is it focuses on female directors. I mean, that is it's hard to miss this. When you look at this, of course, #1 is female director. You go down the list, #7 is a female. I don't remember, by the way, if the previous 2012 poll had females on it. I think it probably had a couple, but not 10 of them, not 15. My guess is there's 2 more there, and there's probably 8, 10, 12, 15 female director movies. And notice number 30 of all time, Portrait of a Lady on Fire from 3 years ago. And again, another female director. So obviously there's a conscientious choice on part of some voters, at least, to put female-directed movies in here, or maybe even also movies with featuring females in them, as number 1 and number 30 are, for good or for ill. Now, by the way, I had noted I did several videos, 3 videos in fact, on the top directors ever. I went through a list from Studio Binder, and they had the top 55 directors ever. You can find that online. And what I found was, I think there was 1 woman in the list of 55. And that's kind of stunned me, because I figured that in today's day and age, you would have more females in lists like that. And if you go online and look up greatest directors ever, most lists will have 0 to 2 female directors in it. So I feel like this is a way, the attempt was to correct that, or to represent females. For good or for ill. In one sense you could say, who cares, it's all about quality. That's the old argument about art. The other case is, well, it's representation. And we all know, whether we like it or not, that is a serious value, maybe the value of today's day and age. Representation of this, that, or the other group, or gender, or race, or something like that. We know that. So maybe we should not have been surprised by number 1 and number 30. Although number 30 really surprises me. I feel like that is, of all the movies from the last 10 years, what should be here? Maybe none of them. And I noticed, by the way, Malick is not on this list. One of my favorites, Terrence Malick. The Tree of Life was on 2012. It's totally dropped off the top 100 of both lists. Why? I don't know. Maybe to make room for some of these other new ones, like Wanda over here at number 48. The Piano. I'm not sure the Piano was on the previous list either. And so on. You just keep going through this. And there's Moonlight from the last 10 years. So, what movies from the last 10 years should be on here? Get Out is on there at number 95. So, one problem with this poll, just the way they do it mathematically, is it's only 10 movies, so someone sits down and tries to do 10, and that's it. So they put multiple movies by the same director, or they just put one representative movie from a director? Do they feature all eras? Because now we're beyond 10 decades of movies. They feature 1 decade of a movie. They feature all continents. I noticed on Twitter, by the way, that people are upset that there are no South American movies in this list. So while this list may be praised as having more diversity of a couple kinds, couple African movies. Well, and one more African movie, I think Tuki Buki was on the previous list. But more diversity, more females, more different areas of the world represented. Still, there are other areas of the world that are not represented here. And eras of movie history that aren't represented here. So I will say good for them for having animated movies. I mean, I don't recall looking at the previous polls. Correct me if I'm wrong. Were there any animated movies on the previous polls? There aren't in the director's list here. But there are 2 Miyazaki movies actually sitting there together. Totoro is outranking Spirited Away slightly. I don't remember an animated movie, so maybe this is a good correction. Maybe. But at the expense of other things. So there's only 2 or 3 silent movies on here, for example, even though that was the first 30 years of film history. And so many films still rely on silent movies, plots, techniques, in order to be successful. So anyway, a lot of movies were on here already. Hard to complain. I mean, you complain about anything. This is top 100, and there's probably 5,000 great movies. There's probably been 5 million movies ever made. And if you take the top 0.001%, those are the great movies. Again, what does great mean? But 100 is a little thin. I think they'll release 250. So, by the way, I'm assuming you're commenting. I'll interact with your comments in a minute. I personally like the director's poll a little bit better. I do not know who these directors are, but I prefer it if I had to choose one or the other. So the order here, I don't know the order. And by the way, they did split up the Godfather movies. I think in previous polls they had the Godfathers lumped together, which made no sense to me personally. So now the Godfather's sitting there at 3, and then 26. By the way, if you want to have more complaints, Coppola has 4 movies on the director's list. There's nothing from Malick. There's nothing from Kieślowski, which is a travesty, by the way. That's like stupid. Red, White, and Blue, Decalogue, something. Give the guy something, but he's not on the list. He's one of my favorites. I covered him on the channel. I don't understand that. Herzog is not on here. Lubitsch. I don't know that Capra's on here. I mean, there's a bunch of classic Hollywood directors that aren't on here, but Coppola gets 4 spots, right? Hitchcock probably got 3. So are they like not spreading out the votes? I don't. Kubrick has several. I don't know the strategies here for voting. Yeah, there's 2 Scorsese movies. There's Godfather Part 2. But I would say when I look at this whole thing, classic Hollywood really takes a blow. Populist movies are not on here much. Like, where's Star Wars? Where's Wizard of Oz? You know, the Shawshank Redemption, those get put on the other popular list. So this is an attempt to differentiate. I'm glad Tati made it on here, but and there's one of the classic Hollywood movies, and not well known in its day, The Night of the Hunter. That seems to be the one. I think it's number 20-something in the critics list. So there's Come and See. I figured that Come and See would be higher than this. And I wasn't prepared for Don't Look Now to be that high. Not a movie I like. Anyway, doesn't matter. I do have reviews of many, or comments on many of these movies, some of which I do try to take down on Letterboxd. Some of which I still like a lot. I think it's really funny, by the way, just to look at this list. Eraserhead and Late Spring together. Do a double feature on those 2. Try to watch those back to back. Actually, watch Eraserhead first, and then watch Late Spring. That would be great. But you know, what's a list like this for? It's trying to describe taste at the moment. It's trying to give people ideas. So clearly, one strategy was give people ideas to go to unusual movies, or less than talked about movies featuring females or female directors, right? And an attempt was made to do that. By the way, I love this stretch right here. This is real all that. That's real nice. No, all that. That's real good. But Separation, Kess, and Where's the Friend's House? Yes. High recommend to all those. In fact, all 3 of those movies can be watched by just about anybody. Those are good movies. Those are on my Letterboxd list of movies I recommend to everybody. Everybody. Because I think they're really interesting formalistically. Good plots. I think they're cross-cultural. Good stuff there. So I don't hate this list. I'm glad science fiction made it on there. At least Blade Runner, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. 2001 has always been up there. So some genre stuff is on here. Kurosawa's on here. There's Battleship Potemkin. Again, this is the director's list. So my question for you all, spent a lot of time on this, 15 minutes, is what do you think is great about this and what's missing? What should we add to numbers 100 to 200? What do you hope will be in the top 250? Because they will put 250 on here. I know what I was going to do. I was going to show you a couple of comments just to get you warmed up. Let's see if I can do this without... Here. There we go. I don't know if that's readable. There. I'll put that down here. I put on my YouTube channel that I was going to do this live stream. So here's a comment that was made on there, which I found kind of interesting. I'll have to lean in to read it. Had a quick... I'm going to read this. This is not me. I really have no opinions, not many opinions on this. It's lists are just for fun. They're just to give people ideas of what to look at that they haven't checked out before, or to affirm what they believe is true about good taste, or both. So I use a list for educational purposes. That's how I would use it. And This is what people think today, and these are some ideas of what we could watch. And as always, the best way to get new movies is to find a director you like. If you really like a director's work, a couple movies that director made, watch more of them, because that's the best way to find movies that you will like. So try out these directors. I do recommend that. Anyway, comment. Had a quick browse of the SNS poll, Sight and Sound. Hard to argue with the Democratic vote, but can't help feeling that the number one spot... Wait, this isn't Democratic. This is like... You have to earn or have the approval of some organization to get a vote in this. So that's not democratic. There's no poll of the masses here. Anyway, they can't help feeling number one spot, although marvelous, important film, fully deserving of the place in the top 10, smacks of elitist trolling. I love how that sentence sort of is so jarring. Like, it deserves to be in the top 10, but it's elitist trolling to put it number one. But again, no one intentionally put it number one. It's like the aggregate of everybody. By the way, because they only have 10 votes and they're not ranked, this system would be easy to game. It would be, sort of easy. It would be easy to get 40 to 50 people together conspiratorially. I'm not saying this happened. But if I wanted to do this, I'd get 40 to 50 people together and say, hey, let's all vote on this particular movie or this set of movies. And that movie would get 40 to 50 votes, probably putting it up in the top 250. Now, how hard would it be to get a movie up to number one? How many people would you need? I'm not sure. I don't know if you could game it. But I think what they need is, when you vote, you have 40 movies, and you have tiers, top 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and there's point values for those. That would let more people have, more say, more movies. There'd be more like lists from voters. And then you would get a little bit of ranking within individual voting, which might help differentiate these movies from each other. Anyway, smacks of elitist trolling. Hardly the kind of movie that will endear itself, to those outside beard-stroking intellectual circles. I guess female critics are not involved. I don't know. Beard stroking. Look forward to the stream. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for commenting. Anyway, I thought that was funny. And it does. If I were to show this to my students, to go back to the critics poll, not to rag on my own students, I know what they like en masse. There may be a couple of aberrations, but if I were to show the top 10 here to my students, I think they could they probably would stomach or like Singing in the Rain, a lot of them. And they might, After that, I don't know. I really don't know that they'd like any of these top 10 movies. The Godfather would probably be liked. So, in terms of populism, it does feel like elitist, but it always has. That's the other thing. If you go back to 1952, is that elitist? The 2012 poll, is it elitist to put the Tree of Life on there? Probably. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. Probably not. But it does feel weird to have Gene Dealman number one overall of all movies ever made. It does feel weird. Maybe I'll get adjusted to that. I will watch it and see. Here's a question for you. If I watch Gene Dealman and I review it on Letterboxd, should I dare to be honest, or am I going to get trolled to death? That's what worries me. Not that I care that much, but to do a whole write-up on how boring the movie is, if it is, or how stupid it is. I did that with a few movies on this list for sure. Anyway, okay, not going to cover myself up here. I don't have a good spot. All right. All I'll say, hopefully you can see this. If you can't, oh well. All I say is that it's clear from this list. This list is far more diverse in terms of kind of films selected. I'm sorry I can't read this, but you can read it. I think this comment is very positive about what's going on here. It's more diverse. But as I said, there are people complaining about there's not enough African movies, not enough, definitely no any Latin American movies, films from Mexico. So diversity is an interesting concept because we probably could list 50 diversities right now. And the ones that are important, race, class, gender, race, gender, nationality, gender. I mean, those are probably the ones when people think of diversity. That's what they're thinking of here. And diversity just in terms of the artist, maybe, not in terms of the subject matter within the movies. Because think about that, that's a difference. Who the director is as a person, identity-wise, those 2 to 3 categories that seem to matter. Also, what's in the movie. And does that matter too? Or is that what's being counted? I don't know. But the problem with 10 movies, the 10 best ever, and you have a vote, is once you start to narrow all the movies ever down to 10, you can get 2 to 3 diversities in there, but not all the ones you should have. All the continents, all the nations, all the genders, all the movements in film history, all the styles, all the genres, all the formal aspects, all the it just goes on and on. And so what is getting crowded out here? Well, classic Hollywood for sure. Populist movies kind of never were here. And silent movies, nearly a goner. I think mostly in the director's poll. I was shocked that Buster Keaton is not in the director's poll. Like, how did that happen? Buster Keaton? Now, the critics have Sherlock Jr., great. The General, yes. So, Buster Keaton, I'm just shocked he's not in director's poll. I'm shocked that Malik isn't here, too. But maybe that's just the way the voting mathematically worked out, and no one intended that, certainly. Anyway, one more comment. Hopefully this makes sense. And this one mentions what's not on the list. I'm going to blow this way up. Whoops. And cover my face. Shoot. There we go. I want to see this. So the question of what's left off. Now, Lawrence of Arabia is on the director's list, but it's not on the critics' list. I do speculate that there are a lot of critics out there who have not seen half of the movies on the list. I know of critics who have not seen these movies. I know critics who have not seen Bergman. I'm not kidding. Citizen Kane. Anything old. Like, critics are not historians. Critics watch new movies. Critics evaluate new movies, and there are hundreds of new movies a year. And so when you're a critic, how much time do you have to dedicate to your craft and to studying history? Actually, it turns out not a lot. So what I like about the director's poll is clearly these directors are inspired by previous artists. I think that's an interesting record of taste. But with critics, I don't know that they've seen classic Hollywood movies. Have they seen Lubitsch? Have they seen Capra? Maybe. But the list goes on. Wilder. I don't know. So this is an interesting beginning. Raging Bull was on one of these lists. Come and See was. It's just, I think this person is listing critics. I think this is the critics list. Is the Seventh Seal not on the critics list? That is a shocker. Let me look. Bergman. Persona. What am I missing here? Well, I don't see Seventh Seal. So, whatever. Yep. So, anyway. Oh, you can't see that. Never mind. That's how adept I am. There's Persona is on the critics list. It is surprising. You know, if you told people back in 1970, Seventh Seal would not be on a list like this, it would probably be shocking. But then again, you know, you have to consider this today. Everyone has access to all of these movies via streaming, or theoretically could. So back in 1962, when they did the poll, did everyone see every movie from the past too? I'm not sure they were well versed in it then either. Now, if I'm calling out critics for not watching old movies, I don't know that they had access back then. I'm not sure, but I wonder. Kurosawa still remains strong on the list, so does Ozu, etc., etc. Anyway, let's check out your comments. I'm not sure I fully analyzed that very well, but no, I probably did, because I'm awesome. No. All right, get this off here. And let's look at the... Oh, great. Lots of people on here. I'm going to read some comments and interact with them. Oh, the first comment. Yesterday, I lost faith in this list. Yeah, diversity. People are happy with Gene Dealman. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah. I am so paranoid. I love paranoia in just in a fun way. And I like to think, did 30 of these people get together and say, this is the one we're all going to put on this list together? Or, maybe you should search Twitter or other forums and see how many people were talking about this movie in the last 10 years, the last couple years. I do think there's French bias in this poll. Maybe. Portrait of a Lady on Fire does feel like a big stretch. Number 30. I don't think there's been time and evaluation for it, but that's kind of like maybe what happened with Tree of Life last time, where big, well beloved by critics, directors, so it got on the list 2 years after it was made or released in 2012 when the poll came out. Now it's not on the list at all. I wonder if Portrait of a Lady on Fire will remain or not. It may just be like a blip at the moment. Oh, and by the way, Spielberg, I think he finally made it on one of these. I saw him on here, I believe Jaws, but I can't remember if it's the critics or the directors. So that was probably, I think people had not settled on which Spielberg movie to vote for. And it must have crystallized somewhat around Jaws. Yeah, number 62 on the director's poll, which I'm going to need to rewatch Jaws. I feel like I've hated it, but I should try it again and just watch it for its technical excellence, if it has that. Anyway. Oh, The Hobbit. You watch Gene Dealman every year for Mother's Day, but it's not a good movie. Yeah, Where on Earth is Come and See? Isn't it on there? It's on the director's poll in the top 40. The critics did not put Come and See on. That is shocking to me. No, it's not on the critics list. I thought that movie had a lot of steam and would be on here, but not. It always stuns me to remember in that movie that they were supposedly firing live bullets on set. Okay. What's my Discord? Is it not in the description? Okay, I'll have to put it in the video description a little bit later after I'm done with this. So hang on with me just a minute. Yeah, these lists will never... Yeah, the Discord's kind of fun. It's a small group. It's great. I like small because when it gets out of hand and too big, I don't know what I'll do there. Yeah, I can't understand Rules of the Game either. It's not a movie I ever got into, but Rules of the Game has been on these lists every single time. And there's probably 20 to 25 movies on these lists that I'm like, why? Or I don't get it. Now, maybe, and I always think it could be me, and I have not sat down and really thought about the movie. Or it could be that I'm right and everyone else is sort of deluded. They're all believing in one movie when a little bit of groupthink, maybe a lot. Yeah, anime. There's no anime movies on here. I mean, is Miyazaki anime? Should Japanese animation be on there? Actually, should American animation be on there? There's no Pixar, for example, as there probably would be in a more populous list. There's no classic or old Disney. What else would there be? But, something like that. They picked Miyazaki as the animated. So, I think if my voting, I did a video on this. What my vote would be? I think I put Thin Red Line by Malick on there. Part of that's a personal choice, but if you watch Malick, his sound design is awesome. It's really a wonder to listen to it. His first two movies are the tremendous examples of the use of how to use a voiceover narrator. He's advanced. He's gotten better as he's aged. His Song to Song is a great exercise in sort of revising Sunrise and then sort of blending that with a Song of Songs from the Bible, which how could you make Song of Songs from the Bible as a movie? Anyway, I'm at a loss to understand Malick's exclusion from this. I would just blame it on a flaw in the way the poll is conducted. Oh, okay, The Hobbit is saying the Sight and Sound may have used ranked choice voting. Well, we'll see then. It hasn't in the past, as far as I understand. This list is just despicable. I am left-leaning, but no way is Moonlight Portrait of a Lady in the top 100. Yeah, I have to ask if they're going to disappear. I don't know. And from the last 10 years, from the last 20 years, what movies should be in this list? Notice, no Tarantino, no Paul Thomas Anderson, no Wes Anderson. Really? It's kind of shocking, actually, Pulp Fiction isn't on these lists. You'd think all the ways it's been talked up and talked about. Not that I'm a fan of it, not that I care, but it is surprising that those three, they're not on here at all. Yeah, it's gotten politically correct, but it's always favored older movies. Yeah, it's kind of going both. It's like weirdly combining those two things, like the old traditional, our old top 100 versus, oh, here are the new diverse movies we need to, yeah. Kieślowski, yeah. It's a crying shame he's not there. You can find the list by just Googling it. It is, or searching for it on the internet. It's not hard to find. BFI Sight and Sound Poll 2022. William Friedkin, not on the list. You're right. If you go, if you go through all of those slightly older directors who are not on here, I'm like Herzog is not on here. Now, I'll make a complaint. I have seen The Gleaner's and I by Agnes Varda. Sorry for my pronunciation. Gleaner's and I. So let's look here. Again, where are the documentaries at? I think there are a couple, but maybe not enough. So I'll pull this back up. And where's the Gleaners at? Let me fix my window. All right. I've seen this movie. Stop it. There we go. 67 on the critics list. That is a documentary. And it's not on the director's list, but Varda probably is on the director's list. Very well known now, well-regarded French female director from the New Wave period up to... Oh, shoot, I don't remember her last movie. But anyway, The Gleaners and I... And this is where I have trouble because... Man, if I were going to put a documentary on here, first of all, Hearts and Minds is a hard one to leave off. But Herzog stuff, I just think Herzog is more complex, artistically, aesthetically, than this particular movie. Not against Varda, but that particular one. So I'm a little annoyed my friend, only in concept, Werner Herzog is not on here. But, oh well. He's got to be in the top 250. If not, then this list is definitely a travesty. Yeah. Charlie Chaplin. The Chaplin's on here with Modern Times, maybe City Lights, and one or two of these. Yeah, and another comment on here, Leone. Sergio Leone, Once Upon a Time in the West, which I think is correct, is on here, but not Go to the Bad and the Ugly. The thing is, if you're going to go through and look at influence, it would be really hard to leave like Leone off here, and like 2 to 3 Leone movies. It's just remarkable how his style, some of his techniques, it's like embedded in movie culture, embedded in the films that came after, like worldwide. Like you look at Leone movies and look at what happened in Japan like 2 years later, 2 to 3 years later, like they're copying him. So would that be a criteria for getting on here? A movie being influential? Well, clearly that's not the case with half or more of these. It's not about influence. But you could make a list where you did emphasize influence, and that is a criterion for good and great. All right. So again, I want to know what it means for a movie to be great. Give us your essay, give us your definition, give us your standards. We'll at least learn from it. So I probably should answer the challenge and do that myself. Days of Heaven is basically perfect. Yeah, it's a shocker that one isn't on there. Tarantino's overrated. Well, yeah, some people would say that. I could definitely argue that. I'm just saying, given the hot commodity always seems to be, why isn't Tarantino on these lists? Three Scorsese, 4 Coppola on the director's list, but 0 Tarantino. Does that say something about the guy? How does it say something about how well he's liked personally, or how well these directors like or don't like his movies? Or they can't find one movie from Tarantino to put on these lists, like they're picking all 10 of them. Like one person is picking one, the other person is picking the other. At the end of the day, all of his movies don't get a lot of votes. I feel like what happens in these polls is that people see them come out and then they see, oh, those are the Scorsese movies to vote for, and then they vote for them. Does that happen? I don't know. I'm just speculating about nearly everything here. I don't have inside intel on the inner workings, inner minds of voters. Yeah, whatever. Regardless of what film's on the list, we should just celebrate whatever our picks are and not worry about why others didn't think like how we do. Sure. I am concerned, and this isn't a problem necessarily, that film is becoming like novels in that sort of modernist period, like the 19-teens or 20s, when novels gain this elite status, or certain kinds of novels gain the elite status, not all of them, but some. And then now today you've got the novel, and for some people that means high art, elite, and they're not read much. Will cinema acquire that sort of elite, status-oriented association? I don't know. I think there's a more of an attempt than ever to try to make the divide between franchise fare, Hollywood, blockbusters, and now here's our cinematic high art in this poll. I gotta say, with some of these movies, this is always my criticism. Negative criticism. Would I rather play a video game or watch these movies? Boy, do video games suck you in, the good ones. So if movies are competing with video games, and I don't necessarily blame the blockbusters for being what they are, given what they have to compete with. All right. Herzog's ability to create raw atmosphere is masterful. Absolutely. And the guy is a philosopher on film, and his voiceover is super well known and masterful. It's hard for me. I would not have left him off. I think I put him on my top 10 list of one of his movies. Someone reads my mind. Tarkovsky's The Sacrifice is not there. Now, everyone, I have a letterbox account. As I said, I put the top science fiction movies ever. I've watched 99.8% of all science fiction movies that are well known, or I'll hedge there, maybe not that many, but close. And so I put The Sacrifice number 1 on my science fiction list. I really love that movie. I think it's great. I think it's a better statement of my beliefs in general than 2001, which strikes me as cold and abstract at times. So therefore, The Sacrifice to me is a better science fiction movie than 2001. That is definitely arguable. You can ignore that comment, but I think that one needs to be watched a little bit more. But I'm happy they put The Mirror or Mirror on there. I love that movie from Tarkovsky. Love it. I know Stalker's on there too. So at least a couple Tarkovsky movies. He hasn't died or gone away. That's great. Yeah, what documentary would you put on? Paisan by Rossellini? Is that a documentary? It's like recreated. That's such a weird movie. And Scorsese loves it. I find it so hard to watch because it feels cheesy. That's the problem with some of those Rossellini scenes, at least with that movie in particular. Yeah. Anyway, if you want an alternative list, I do have a bunch of them. My favorite movies on Letterboxd, what movies I recommend to everybody, and then my favorite science fiction movies, noirs. I got like 5 or 6 lists on there. Again, go follow me over there. It's kind of fun to go be over there. Yeah. You're not surprised the Seventh Seal is not on there. I am, just because it is popular. I think now it's my most popular video on my YouTube channel. I think it's not always been that way, but it's been number 1 for a while for most days of the year. For whatever reason. Maybe there aren't a lot of Seventh Seal videos, or maybe that video is actually good, but anyway, but it could be that people are still interested in Seventh Seal. So, yeah, no Howard Hawks. Now, that's a Tarantino favorite. But what Howard Hawks movie? See, that's the problem with Hawks, is like you got to pick one of 6. or 8. So which ones? I would have picked Bringing Up Baby. and that's another thing this list is short on. If you want diversity, great. But diversity in what? There's not a lot of comedy. That's always been a problem at award ceremonies, as you guys know. Not a lot of comedies win Best Picture. In fact, hardly any do. And the lack of comedies on here, I would not sit down with these lists and watch them during like a COVID lockdown scenario. You will become absolutely depressed. These are not the right movies for that scenario. Just to go back through here a little bit, this is the critics list. Happy movies. Now, some of these I haven't seen, so I can't comment on them. But Singing in the Rain might make you feel happy. That has some melancholy in it. And, of course, there's catharsis here. So maybe Sunrise is happy and Godfather through catharsis. I don't know. But comedies, there's some funny moments in these. I would argue Playtime is a comedy for sure. But as we're going through here, City Lights, I'm looking at 1 out of 10 of these is a movie that is tonally is supposed to be delightful, humorous, joyful overall. Probably, throughout its runtime, not at the end, but throughout its runtime, joyful, delightful, humorous, goofy. Tonally, those tones are like left out of this list, and so if I were to make an alternative list, I probably would make it with like weighting far more towards comedy, which I know is specific, maybe culturally specific or generationally specific, but that's what's missing. Although, Parasite, as much as I don't like that movie, at least tries and is funny. I did laugh at that movie, so I'm glad. That tonally is more interesting than some of these other ones, which are pretty dire affairs overall. There's the general. So maybe 6 to 10 comedies. Anyway, those are all my hot takes, which probably have already been repeated ad infinitum on the internet elsewhere. Yeah, so the Howard Hawks movie. Only Angels Have Wings. I don't think that would ever make it on here. My channel, I have 160 to 170 videos now. Not all have been released, but on what makes this movie great. So I'm surpassing the 100 here. I have my own tastes. Some of them conform to this, some don't. So, whatever. Feel free to peruse my channel for these movies. If you look up these movies and start to watch them, you might find a video on my channel about them to try to help you see the light or help affirm your opinion or something like that. Anyway, this has been great. Look at how many people are here. Wonderful. So glad you were here. Thanks for watching. Letterboxd, YouTube, channel, Discord, newsletter, all those things for me. Twitter. Thanks a lot. This was fun. I guess we'll do this in 10 years, but maybe we should do another video analyzing this a little bit more. Really appreciate all of your opinions, and as always, it was fun. See you later.